Hello, guys. So I thought it would be easier to record the instructions for this rather than try to explain them in typing. So I'm hoping that you were able to watch the Kurt Vonnegut video called The Shape of a Story. I'm trying everything I can to make sure that you get a working link for that, but you know how our internet is. If you were able to watch it, you saw that he had plotted the shape of the story on an axis of good news and bad news. And he was talking about how you, in a kind of like a simple story like Cinderella, you can kind of track the character's actions and whether or not they think something is good news and bad news. But at the end of that video, he starts to reference Hamlet and how maybe for really good literature, you don't actually know what the good news is and what the bad news is. You know, in your own life, you make a certain decision and sometimes you find out whether that was a good decision or not years down the road, maybe, hours down the road or whatever, but it's not always immediate. And sometimes you never even find out if that was a good decision or a bad decision for you. You may justify and say, yeah, I think it was a good decision because it led me to where I am now, but really it's just the decision that we made. And we can't see what the alternative realities would be. And this is what makes great literature, at least according to Vonnegut and me, which is that the human nature that the book displays is so complicated that you can't just decide, oh, here's the moral of the story. It's about something more complex than just morals. It's about human behavior. So for this activity, you are going to have a list of plot points. I've printed them for everyone if you are working in pairs. So find a partner. Or a group of three is fine. You have these lists of plot points and you're going to cut these out and you're going to paste them on a timeline. But the timeline can be more complex than just good news, bad news. We talked a little bit about this last class when we were talking about how Addie wants to upset Ance's version of a correct timeline. Ance kind of sees this progress, have kids, move down the line, the kids will take over the work for you, take care of you, you are buried with your family and the progeny continues, right? Addie says, nope, I'm going to disrupt that, take me back to the beginning. So she creates this kind of circular timeline instead. And at the end of this book, you can kind of see how Darl is stuck in some weird timeline as well. So I think there's different ways of thinking about the shape of this story. So you're going to cut out these plot points and you are going to map them along what you think is the shape of the story. I have examples. So one group years ago had this as the shape of their story. Let me make sure I can get back here. All right, so that it's kind of like goes in a loop-de-loo. There's a river at some point. They've placed some things sideways, some things parallel. They've put a box around some things, and they had justifications for why they felt like that was the shape of the story. This group drew a lot of pictures. And I think that goes along with this idea that language is limiting. And so they felt like, well, I want to be able to draw the shape of the story using something other than language. But then do you see how also they tore out certain of the plot points? They kind of figured out where to place them. They drew a picture of a girl over here. They folded up some things, etc. So they had a kind of various ways of representing the plot point. And this other one that I'm going to show you does that, I think, the best. It's not like necessarily the best timeline, but they've like been creative with how they cut out or rip out the plot points. Like, for example, right here, they've torn it, they've fractured it up because this is when Darl has his existential crisis. And they were like, Darl doesn't know what he is. So we're going to put this as fractured pieces. Or over here, and I cannot remember why, they just have torn out the word Addie and put it upside down. And they made tons of these kind of choices. And they decided that the shape of this story, the overarching shape, is a kind of spiral with remembering my father and how you're getting ready to die, Addie's quote about the meaning of life or the meaninglessness of life at the center. So I'm hoping that you kind of get the idea now. I don't want a straightforward timeline. This happens, and this happens. Partially because we don't even know. We don't know when Addie's narration is taking place in the book. And some of the parts of the river, we don't know what comes first, what comes next. We know the order that Faulkner has placed them in, but we don't know like cause and effect, what comes first and what comes next. So we're thinking about the timeline more abstractly. And I want you to be able to represent the abstract quality of that timeline in very creative ways. So for this, points for creativity, points for being very careful about all the decisions that you make. Because when we come back next time, you're going to present your timelines, and then we will talk about the ending of this book and whether or not we think Darrell is actually insane. So good luck on this. You have the rest of class to work on it. And then I have supplies in the back of the room. You have glue sticks, you have scissors, although I don't have that many of these. So either share them or you can go and ask another teacher to borrow one if you are promised to be not disruptive. And then I've got these black markers, and you guys know where my art supplies are. You can use those. So if you have any questions, I'm available on Remind, but have fun with this project. You get to show how a very complicated, weird little book could be represented visually. So it could be good fun for those of you guys with spatial reasoning. All right, I will talk to you later.